Good afternoon. Hello, my name is Hanan, and
I'm Chelsea.
and thank you for joining us today for our International Women's Day celebration. We're excited to be here today with you to hear from these inspiring women leaders. Before we get started, we wanted to thank our sponsors. Big shout out to Viasat, today's lead sponsor, and thank you to our champion sponsors, U.S. Army, TriLink Biotechnologies, part of Maravai Life Sciences, Collins Aerospace, a Raytheon Technology subsidiary, and Cox Communications. And thank you to our partners, Illumini Foundation, Fisher Scientific, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Hologenic, TaylorMade Golf Company, Quaidel, and Biocom California. And the first panelist that's going up today is Anna. Anna, may you please tell us about your background and who you are as a person?
Yeah, of course. So happy to be here. I am a reliability engineer with Viasat, and kind of got into that when I was going to college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I enjoyed math and science and just didn't know what I wanted to do with it. So my dad, who actually had wanted to be an engineer and had kind of been steered in another direction, said, well, why don't you check out engineering? So looked at a bunch of engineering schools, ended up applying to Carnegie Mellon out in the Pittsburgh area. And at Carnegie Mellon, you have to apply separately for the electrical and computer engineering school. So while going through all those applications, I was like, well, what's one more piece of paper? Applied to that and ended up liking it, and really just kind of jumped in and enjoyed the challenge that it kind of provides me on a regular basis. And so after that, I graduated. I moved to Boston for a couple of years where I worked. I started to get into reliability engineering. And then 5 years ago, moved back to San Diego where I grew up, joined Viasat, and have been a reliability engineer here since then. And for those of you that don't know, reliability engineering is it's kind of a little bit of a mix of everything. We do electrical work, we do material science, we look at mechanical engineering to look at parts as they're failing and figure out what's going on and how to prevent them from failing in the future. So we get to break a lot of stuff. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing, but it does provide me with challenges every day. I get to work with a lot of different people and a lot of different products and programs. Right now, currently working mostly on our commercial airline Wi-Fi system. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. I have a question for you. How was it like living in Boston, and how did you living in Boston contribute to you becoming an engineer?
So living in Boston was really great because I grew up in San Diego in California, and everyone, for the most part, that grows up here stays here for college and for, forever a lot of the times. And so I really wanted for college to get out and try something new. And my plan was to go to Pittsburgh, come right back to San Diego, to say that I left, but I ended up finding a really great job in Boston. And so it allowed me to kind of grow as a person outside of school, far away from family. It allowed me to kind of really break into my industry with a really good team. I think it was important to start my career doing something that I enjoyed with people that would help me grow as an engineer. When you come right out of school, you don't really know a whole lot, and you really learn a lot at your first job. And so it was a really great opportunity for me there. And then it also, because I was used to the beautiful San Diego weather, I decided that I needed to pick up something that would allow me to be outside all winter long. And so I learned to snowboard when I moved out there. And now, as you can see by my background, I love it. And whenever I get some free time, I get to go up into the mountains, and just really grateful for that experience as well.
Thank you, Anna. Speaking more about yourself, I heard that you are an athlete, and so I wanted to know kind of how that works with you being in the STEM field.
Yeah, so I was a swimmer, and when I was looking at colleges, I decided I wanted to swim, and I wanted to go to a really good engineering school. So that's how I ended up at Carnegie Mellon. And it's funny, as an engineer, in college, when you tell people that you're an athlete, they're shocked. They're like, how are you doing this? How are you, going to practice 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, and getting all your work done? But for me, it really, it forced me to be very organized, and it forced me to really know what I wanted. And I loved swimming, and I loved my degree. And so it makes you have 4 hours, you know that I have 2 hours to get my work done, and I have 2 hours to get practice in. And so my GPA was better on the seasons when swimming was kind of, we had all of our swim meets because you were forced to kind of really set your priorities. But the other thing that I really enjoyed about swimming is it gave me that mental break from kind of the grueling coursework that is the STEM field a lot of the times. And it gave me a break to relax and hang out with friends. And I think, if I could give anyone advice that's thinking about going into engineering and doesn't want to give up their sport, or vice versa, has a sport that they love to play and doesn't think that they can do both, is if you really want it and you really enjoy what you're doing, both in the classroom and out on the field and in the swimming pool, you can make it work. And you learn a lot about yourself and becoming somebody that's strong and can handle stress by doing both of those things. So it's something that I'm really grateful for in my time growing up.
I love how you found what you're passionate about, and it's so crazy that you know how to swim because I don't know how to swim, and it's really embarrassing at this point. But I wanted to ask you, what is Viasat, and why did you choose to work with Viasat?
Yeah. So right out of school, I was with a company that did a lot of really great work. It was a large company, a lot of resources available, right? And as I mentioned before, when you're out of school, you don't really know much. And you kind of got to rely on the people in your career to teach you what you need to know on the job. So that was really great. And it was a little bit more process. It was in government defense work. So a lot of process, a lot of controls. And when I was new, I needed that so that I didn't get lost. And Viasat is a great company because it's a little bit of a mix of everything. It's a little bit of that startup vibe, but also a very stable company. We've been around for over 30 years. There's government work, there's commercial work, there's a lot of opportunity within the company. And so that combined with wanting to move back to the San Diego area to be closer to home made Viasat a really good match for me and what I was looking for.
So as a senior, I would want to know what advice you would have for like the first stepping stone into your field of work.
You can't get by with memorizing. I think one of the things that was the hardest for me when I started school is that you can't just memorize an equation and have that get you through the exams. You really have to try and understand what the equation is telling you and really learn on a bigger picture how systems work together, or if you're chemical engineering, how these chemicals interact, because memorization won't get you too far in college, and it definitely won't get you too far in the real world when there's a lot of new stuff that happens, and that's the exciting thing. So don't get stuck on that, don't be stressed about that, but know that you really want to learn what you're learning and not just memorize the numbers on a page.
I wanted to ask, besides swimming, do you have any other hobbies, like anything that you participate in?
I do. I actually, I volunteer with an organization called November Project, and it's a free fitness group that is located in 53 cities around the world. And in San Diego, twice a week, Mondays and Wednesday mornings before work, I get up and I lead a group of people in some fitness. So it's some running, it's some high fives, it's hugs, it's sit-ups. It's a really fun community environment where I can let loose a little. We're silly, we laugh, but also kind of get that healthy, active athlete side of me out before I go into work. So Viasat's really great because I'm able to do both of those things, which I'm also grateful for.
Thank you, Anna. We're gonna catch up with you on the Q&A, but our next panelist that's going up is Rain. May you please tell us about yourself and how you came to be in your background?
Awesome. My name is Rain Howard, and I'm one of the rare few that didn't go to college. I don't have the patience, I'll be honest. So I decided to go the route with the military, the more hands-on route. So I went into the Navy, and I was an electronics technician, and I did that for a few years. And my my specialty was weapon systems and satellite communications. So once I decided to get out, I decided to lean into the satellite communications because that part of the engineering, especially communications engineering, was something that I was very, very interested in. I am a tinkerer by nature. So, anything with that can be turned on, or at least with a battery, I will take it apart at some point, just to see how it works. I'm definitely process oriented, as Anna said. So at least if I know how it works and it's broken, then I can fix it. And that's really how I've kind of like made it through my engineering life. After I got out the military and I leaned into being a communications engineer, I started contracting for the Department of Defense. And I did that for about 12 years. I was installing satellite communications terminals all over Southwest Asia, Europe, and in Africa. The only continent I haven't been to is Antarctica. And I've traveled a lot. And it was a lot of, I think for me, it was eye-opening, and it actually helped me step into myself, because when you're traveling a lot and you're traveling by yourself, especially as a woman, you kind of have to own it. You've got to own it. Especially when you show up on site. And in the STEM field, as you young ladies know, and everyone else on this panel, women are very far and few between. So it's not like I was showing up to the site and I was like, oh, hey, sister girls. No, if I saw another woman, I was like, hey, come here, hug me. Let's talk about this. How'd you get here? Tell me how you got here, and I'll tell you how I got here. And that's really how I ended up getting exposed to a lot of things, because I didn't really necessarily have the guidance or a plan. So I kind of just went around it the long way. I'm originally from the Virgin Islands. I grew up in St. John. So that is more hospitality based and for, travel and vacation. So I wasn't really exposed to a lot of communications or even engineering. And it was just something my family or parents just couldn't understand as to why they couldn't bring a toaster or something in the house and I leave it alone. I didn't understand it either at the time, but it is what it is. Once you know what your jam is, you even if you don't know how to label it, you can kind of accept it. And that's kind of what I did. After I stopped contracting, I stepped into the commercial world, and Viasat found me, and I was actually very, very humbled and honored to be asked to come join the team, because the work-life balance, the environment, the people that you meet here, it's a whole different level from some of the companies or even other sites that I've been to. So that's kind of my thing. Right now, at Viasat, I'm a systems integration engineering manager. And systems integration engineering it's really a collective of a lot of things. Systems engineering, project engineering, test engineering, installation, integration. And I like that because I don't necessarily have to do the same thing every day. When I come into work, I have, an opportunity to either design a system or go outside in the backyard and test a system, integrate a system, things like that. And I feel like for the type of person that I am, that flows with me.
Ooh, oh my gosh, what really got me in was when you said you didn't have patience, because I don't have patience either. But one of the things that caught my eyes when you were talking about communications and you traveling, like, didn't that have a toll on you? Like, didn't you get stressed when you were traveling, or like when you had to do all of those things? Like, what was going through your mind when you were doing them?
Not necessarily stressful. I think I learned a lot about myself, and kind of knowing what I needed to make me tick, and just kind of being comfortable with myself. I think that was the hardest thing to do, especially in the STEM field as a woman, is sometimes you always feel like you have to prove yourself when you show up somewhere. And I kind of stopped doing that after a while. I was like, here, I am here and no one else is coming but me. So, we're either going to get this done or we're not. So I'll be honest, living out of a suitcase after a while got to be, a little rough, but you learn to kind of make or take things with you that you can kind of make home, bring home with you. So I had routines and processes, like when I showed up to a site, if I was going to be there for a certain amount of time, I would unpack my suitcase and put my clothes away and have a little candle and, things around the room, pictures of my family, so that when I came home, I didn't feel like I was in a hotel room.
So Rain, you did talk earlier about the struggles of being a woman and traveling by yourself. And then similar to the other question, what were the mental struggles that you went through?
Some of the mental struggles that I went through was there was a lot of fear. I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of fear. Traveling as a woman by yourself can be a little scary at times, especially if you're traveling through countries that you're not familiar with the language or the customs. So I always used to take the time to try to bring myself up to speed, so that I didn't, if I showed up somewhere, I didn't unintentionally disrespect someone or disrespect the culture or their language or the community. So I did put some effort into it. I would try to at least, you know, uh, learn some phrases and words and even just greetings so that they could, they'd feel a little bit more comfortable, because that's one things that I did learn traveling. And people, at different places told me, they were like, they really appreciated the fact that I at least took the time to learn how to greet them in their language, and then and understand that was important to them. So once I started doing that and just kind of stepping into my flow, I'm an outgoing person. I can kind of make friends with everybody because I don't have a problem communicating, which probably why I'm a communications engineer. But just being open and honest, the feedback that I got is that they never felt that I wasn't genuine. So after I started traveling that way, I didn't really feel like I was in not necessarily in trouble or like in situations, because there were a lot of people that would help me. It just, walking through the airport, I, prime example, I used to wear contacts. One of my contacts literally tore, and I have horrible eyesight, and I could not make my way through an airport because I couldn't see anything. And I literally stopped someone, was like, you know, I greeted them in their language, explained the situation, asked them if they spoke English, explained the situation, and they walked me all the way to my gate. And I just thoroughly appreciated that.
Whew. First of all, you're a woman of color. You traveled.
Yes.
You've done so much. What's it called? One of the things that I wanted to ask you, how did you, being a woman of color, being able to like speak different languages and like all of that, how did that contribute to like the whole Viasat company being successful?
I would say with Viasat being successful, I think Viasat is really, really good and very in tune with accepting us and everyone as their whole self. They want you to bring your whole self to work, regardless of what color you are, nationality, or race. So once I felt like I was accepted here at work, it was a lot easier for me to wear that Viasat badge and travel the world with that same mentality that I'm just going to accept you and you're going to accept me when I show up. And that has translated very, very well through customers and then other interactions. I'll be honest, I was very, very afraid as a woman of color to be traveling by myself, because I don't know, maybe I just didn't expect a lot of reception internationally, but I never, ever got rejection. Never got rejection. So I would think it was a success.
So, Rain, you talked about your challenges in not having a clear path as to what you wanted to do. So, can you explain more on kind of how that was, the challenges that came with that?
Yeah, so not being exposed to STEM or like having anyone with a STEM background or as an influence with me growing up, it was just kind of something that I cultivated myself. I didn't even know it was STEM at the time. I just knew I didn't understand how it worked. And, you telling me that it works this way just wasn't going to cut it. I needed to see it. and sometimes that, went over well, sometimes it didn't. Especially, when you're taking apart brand new appliances. So once my parents kind of understood that that it was something outside of their, scope, I would say they did put an active effort in more exposure. They started sending me to visit family members in the continental United States, and then putting me in summer programs and things like that were STEM or engineering based, so that I could actually see whether or not it was something that I really wanted to do, or if it was just kind of a hobby. And once I got to my first STEM camp, my mind was blown. I was like, wow, people do this all the time. And I could actually make a career out of this. So just that exposure and knowing that that's what I needed was really the biggest challenge. And then I think my second biggest challenge is that I just I knew for myself personally, I didn't want to go to school. Not that saying that going to school is a bad thing. I just didn't want to go to college right after high school because I didn't think I had the mental fortitude and discipline to get myself through those 4 years. So I chose to take another route, whereas I felt like going to the military would help me build up that discipline to go to go to school. And then, I ended up just kind of taking courses here and there, just to get certifications, but I never actually completed the degree.
Thank you, Rain. I know you said you serve a big role model to many people who think college is not for them. That you can still be successful even without that education right after high school. So our next panelist is Isabel. So if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Isabel Delaney, and I am a principal engineer at Collins Aerospace in the test and certification team. What we do is we make sure that all of the structures that we design before they are ready for service are safe. So we design test panels that will reflect our structures, and we test them, light them on fire, shoot lightning at them, make sure that they pass the test so that they'll be safe in service. A little bit about me, I guess I'm from Canada, and I moved to Los Angeles with my family in 2001. And growing up, I have an older brother who's 8 years older than me, so he was watching Star Trek, X-Files, all of these shows and I adored him and looked up to him, so I just wanted to be his little shadow. And that made me want to be an engineer, I guess. I also traveled a lot with my family, and we spent 6 months living in Abu Dhabi when I was in grade 7. And the culture out there, they really loved their fancy cars. So that was the first time that I'd ever seen cars as a luxury and not just something that takes you from point A to point B. And that's truly when I fell in love with cars, and I wanted to be an engineer since that day. But, being an engineer is sort of a vague term. It's different for everybody. And that just led me to seeking out a high school that would have a robotics program, because I really like to have my hands in whatever I'm working on. And I really loved robots and space stuff. So I went to a high school with a robotics program, and then eventually, applied to UCSB. And then, just following my engineering degree, I really didn't know what I wanted to do until I started working for a professor in his lab doing composites manufacturing. And since I was studying aerospace structures, I understood the analysis portion of composites, but I was really excited to get into the manufacturing. And it was just me in a lab mixing resin, cutting carbon fiber, impregnating the fabric, making a vacuum bag. And those skills, aside from all of my classes that I took, are what got me my first job at SpaceX out of college. And I was a fiber sim engineer. So I designed how to manufacture composite parts on the rocket. And I got to see all sorts of cool parts. I designed the fiber sim for the landing legs, the Crew Dragon capsule, some really parts of the rocket that people know and recognize now. And but eventually I wanted to come back to San Diego because, like Anna said, the weather here is amazing, and I felt like I had developed a home by going to school here. So I sought out a company in San Diego so that I could come back, and that was Collins Aerospace. But all of my jobs, looking back, have all sort of been around the same field of working with my hands and working in sort of manufacturing and development, because that's where I feel like my intuition leads. I've always been a very crafty person. My mom has taught me every craft under the sun, so that's just where, I fell into place in different roles that were around manufacturing. And you'll find that, too, in your path in engineering school, you'll find that you don't know what you want to be as an engineer. There's so many different roles, and they're all so different, and you don't really know what they're going to look like until you start working at a company. But you'll start to sort of pick and choose little paths by making small decisions throughout your career that will lead you to what you eventually truly love.
I'm really shocked that you actually lived in Abu Dhabi. But my question to you is, what did you design being part of Space? And like, I just want to know more about it because you were talking, but I didn't really get the gist of it. So could you further explain it?
For what Collins Aerospace does?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Collins Aerospace designs predominantly structural components to commercial aircraft. Our biggest structure is the nacelle, which is what encompasses the engine. Usually in commercial aircraft, that's under the wing. And my department that I had worked in for 5 years was aftermarket. So we helped all of the airlines that had, parts of the nacelle that had either broken or needed fixing or had incurred some hail in a flight or hit a bird sometimes. And we help the airlines either fix or, swap out an old part for new. And sometimes we just have to tell them to buy new parts, which is heartbreaking. But we usually try to help them fix what they have because it can be very expensive. But as a whole, Collins Aerospace, we're also part of the Chula Vista campus, at least, is aerostructures, and we do structural design for the nacelle. We also have like a landing gear team, an internal team. We've got lots of different business units that do different parts of the aircraft.
So I'm sure many students watching are probably interested in like airplanes and aerospace. So why would you recommend this field to the younger generation?
I think if you look at all of the advancements, technological advancements and structures that we've made as a species, airplanes and rockets are probably the coolest things that you could work on. We get sort of jaded when you take a flight that it's just like any other transportation, but it's truly flying through space. And that's really incredible that we have not only such a technical achievement, but that it's incredibly safe to do as well. So I think it's also really a great field because it's incredibly diverse and there's so many different opportunities, whether you're interested in doing something on the manufacturing side or if you actually prefer deep, intense analysis, research and development where you're breaking new ground, or project management. We have finance departments. You don't even need to be an engineer to be involved in aerospace. So you get to meet all people from different cultures and backgrounds. And as much as it is, and there's so much variety in the industry, it's also very small. I was just talking to Anna earlier, and she works with my previous manager, who moved to Viasat. So you make connections with people who end up working at different companies, but all in the same realm, and you see each other at conferences, you keep in touch, you follow different opportunities. So I think it's a great industry to be a part of, especially for female engineers, because there is a really great camaraderie with other women who know what you're experiencing.
Good.
On to our next panelist, Jimmesha.
Multi-box.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, if you could please introduce yourself.
No, double box. I don't know what her name is yet.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jimmesha Lenhoff, and I am a product manager at Viasat.
So what is your job like?
Excuse me, everyone. My 4-year-old just woke up, and I'm the only one home. So excuse me. We got to get here.
Oh, look
All
at her.
right.
She's
This is my
Your child is so
this
cute.
is Sage, my son. Thank you. All right. So my name is Jimmesha Lenhoff. I'm a product manager for Viasat. I've been with Viasat for about 7 years. I'll get to actually what product management does in just a second.
And I just go to school and with my friends.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's adorable.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so as a product manager, what I do is I am kind of the spoke that connects all the different prongs throughout the wheel. I kind of ended up in this role in a very surprising way, in the fact that if you would have spoke to me, I'd say 15 years ago, I would expect at this particular point in my life, I would be a host on the Today Show. I am actually a journalism and mass communications major with an emphasis in psychology, or should be a minor in psychology and emphasis in advertising. So a lot of talking, a lot of writing. I love communicating and working toward a common goal with different people. So when I graduated from the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, I actually went back home, worked for Sprint, and I did their events and promotions. And I traveled all around and opened new Sprint stores all across the country, and also participated in their media buys and a lot of other different marketing initiatives. So when the opportunity came to move to Denver, I then had a chance to work for an audio technology company, where there I worked a lot in sales, and I worked a lot in sales, and I went and worked with all the different types of buyers to try to get our product, which was a headphone, on the different types of shelves. So I was an account manager who traveled and really enjoyed it. But I learned that I am not very good at asking for the sale. So if you're an account manager, you got to be able to ask for the sale. That was not necessarily something I was good at. But I really enjoyed events, and I really enjoyed marketing and letting people know about the product and being an ambassador and advocate for the product. So I had the opportunity to interview with Viasat, once again, doing their events and their promotions and traveling all over the country to advocate about the Viasat product. You name any podunk, very small town that had a fair, a festival, an event, I was there, boots on the ground, talking to all the customers about Viasat service and introducing them to our sales team. I really got a lot of opportunities to interact with the customer, and I feel it gave me the opportunity to be a customer advocate. So then I had the opportunity to move to our customer operations side, which I think was really great because I had a knack for being a customer advocate for so much time in the field. So after that and being on the retention team and really trying to figure out what is it about our product that makes people love it or hate it? What is it about the customer experience that we could improve or we could just totally toss aside? After working on those types of initiatives, I had the opportunity to advocate for the customer in an even bigger role on the product side, which was really great for me because it gave me an opportunity to start, not only am I a customer advocate with the operations side and with the product, but now I'm a customer advocate and I'm going to start working with engineers to make sure that we're actually producing products that are beneficial to our customers and meet our customers' needs. And I've been doing product management for about the past 3 years, and I've absolutely loved it. And I really enjoy being on this panel with so many talented engineers because I think it also demonstrates that, hey, and even a marketing specialist has a place in the STEM world as far as just making sure that all of the dots are being connected, and then we're not forgetting about the customer. Engineers can speak a very different language. It's my job to really break that down and make sure the customer can understand it and they know the product and the experience that they're getting. So I've absolutely loved it. It's kind of like being my own mini CEO for the different products or programs that I manage.
I see that you're a mother of a 4-year-old child, and I know being a mother isn't easy because me having little siblings and having to take care of them is not easy. So my question to you is, what struggles did you face being a mother, and like how did you switch from one subject to another in terms of you being a manager? Because, stressful.
Okay, so what you said is actually pretty interesting, and the reason I say that is because as I was talking about my journey into product management, I had a child. And so as I was on the retention team in customer operations, I went away for about 3.5 months on my maternity leave. And the week that I was back, my boss came to me and told me that I had the opportunity to move to product management. So not only have I been on maternity leave for the past almost 4 months, I'm trying to return back to get into the groove of no longer breastfeeding a child, but now I'm in the boardroom and having conversations. So now I'm doing that, and I'm doing it for a different team where I have to get familiar with everything that's going on around me. So I'd say that it was a challenge to return, and even a bigger challenge to feel comfortable in my new role. And when I first took on the new role, I had a bit of imposter syndrome, kind of feeling like I didn't belong in the position that I'm in, where, hey, I have a kid at home, but now I also have to come into work and put on an engineering hat to make sure that these people who are speaking a totally different language to me, I can make sure I understand it as best to my ability. So it was a challenge, but eventually I had to get over that imposter syndrome and understand that I belong where I am just as much as anyone else does. So I'm going to definitely be honest, it took some time to just get comfortable with myself and my new responsibilities and juggling. But the juggling thing, it's a balance. And some days I'm an awesome Viasat employee. Some days I'm a so-so mom. Some days I'm an amazing mom, and I could definitely probably be a better employee. But I think it's, they tell you that balance is like this, but it really just kind of does this every day.
So you mentioned earlier how you worked your way up to the position that you are now. So how is that process of getting promoted or getting a higher position like?
It is a lot of advocating for yourself, believing in yourself, so that way you can be your best advocate. But also, putting yourself out there for speaking up to take on the hard projects, stretching yourself, making sure you are uncomfortable, because if you are totally comfortable, you probably could be doing a little bit more. So I took on some of these projects that people didn't want to take. Whenever I speak to the operations team, they laugh at me because they're like, what are you going to have us do next? Because I became the person who's willing to try things that other people have not tried, and I love it. So I think a lot of putting myself in uncomfortable situations, failing, succeeding, I think that is what allowed me to continue to climb in my career.
Thank you, Jimmesha, and all of you women. Well, now we're moving on to the Q&A. The first question is for Anna. And what's the best part about your job?
That it's different every day. It can be a stressful part of the job. It can be the hard part is you get a problem and you're like, I have no idea what this is. How am I supposed to come up with an answer? But the process of working through that and meeting people and having to work together to kind of come to a solution, it's what's exciting. It's what keeps me interested and engaged. And it's definitely kind of where I feel the most proud of what I'm able to accomplish.
Oh, and the next question is for Isabella. How did you market yourself and start your career?
I think the best way is to seek out mentors who can help show you along the way. That's one thing to remember when you're in engineering is you're never really doing anything on your own. There's always a group of people who are checking your work or that you're working alongside with. So creating those alliances and partnerships is incredibly important because they will help you move along. Now the people that I started work with are moving into higher positions and finding opportunities for me. And just echoing also what Anna had said, and also Jimmesha, just advocating for yourself, taking those challenges. As soon as you get bored or you know exactly how to do your job 100%, it's probably a sign that you need to look for other opportunities. So being the one to raise your hand when someone asks who can take this on, looking into what other projects are going on that you don't know of, getting into, groups or circles at work that are not based on just your job, your day-to-day, but are doing other things as well. I'm part of Women in Aviation and have been, the president of that organization and also just an advocate for it for a few years. And we're constantly communicating and getting together with all of the other women and men at work. And just, making sure that you have those connections will help you advance in your career regardless of how, what your path looks like.
Prior to that, I wanted to ask, how do you find a mentor? At the same time, can you give us a concluded summary as to how to do your resume?
Sure. So finding a mentor can be a little bit difficult because it's a two-way relationship, right? You are seeking a mentor and your mentor needs to have the time and space available to have a mentee, and not everybody has that time. A lot of people make the problem of approaching people who are always extremely busy, and unless you put in that effort, you're not going to be able to have that time. So a lot of times it's just, having side conversations with the people that you work with, always being courteous and reaching out to other managers and getting involved in ways that aren't just tied to your job. That's probably one of the best ways to meet others at work who might have that open space to mentor you. And I've always found mentors by just sort of falling into their lap, if that makes sense. I'm not always seeking out a mentor. They just kind of come across, and we have this communication that goes back and forth, and eventually they start giving me advice on career moves and advocating for me as well. And then I do run resume workshops and interview workshops for students. I would say as a hiring manager, I don't know about the other ladies if they've been in that position as well to hire people, but we tend to look for very specific information. So I think sometimes college students struggle with only having classes as their basis for their resume, and it can be very intimidating when that's really all you can put on it. But try to think about ways to quantify the impact you've made or things that you've learned, in a way that's more tangible as opposed to you took XYZ class. Try to consider ways that you can quantify and qualify your expertise to make you stand out a little bit more. But also, the first job that you get is going to be the hardest one to get, and then after that, everything's a little bit easier. So just trust the process, apply to a lot of options, and most importantly, never pass up a job opportunity just because the description doesn't sound very appealing, because guaranteed all of the jobs I've had in the past would not sound appealing written down on paper. It's much more, you will find much more fulfillment, with the people that you work with, the customers you interact with, your group and team. That's going to be much more impactful for you in your career than the actual nitty-gritty work that you do. So don't pass up anything that sounds like it could potentially be boring. I'm sure lots of them are.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Our next question is for Rain. The question is, what's your proudest accomplishment as a female in the industry?
Oh, that was a question. Okay, so big guns. All right, so my biggest accomplishment as a female in the industry, let's say, I think that there was an opportunity for me at one point to really step into the limelight. And I'm not a person that will step into the limelight. I'm totally happy being part of a team and letting someone else take, credit for it. But we were downrange, and there was a company called DRS that we were supporting at the time, and their system went completely offline, and the engineer that they had on site just couldn't get it up. And I wasn't technically there for that project. I just happened to be on the same site. And, I was hearing about it in the briefs and the meetings and stuff like that. Sometimes when you hear something, you're like, you mull it over in your mind and you're like, well, maybe they could try this, maybe they could try that. And I approached him and I was like, hey, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I'm here to help if you need help. And I have some ideas if you're willing to listen to them. And he kind of paused for a little bit, and he thought it over, and he was like, I'm willing to talk to you about it if you know what I mean. If you're not here to like steal my job. And I was like, no, that's not what I'm here to do. You seem like you're struggling, and it doesn't look. I know the feeling when you're struggling with something and you can't, and especially when the customer is like breathing down your back, you just want it to be over. So we collaborated and we ended up getting it done. And I went on about my business, and about 2 weeks later I was on another site, and his boss found me for that company, found me to make sure that they told me thank you and that they acknowledged the fact that I didn't have to help. And I felt like that was my defining moment for myself when I realized, I was like, you know what I mean? I could do this and I'm okay. You know what I mean? I could do this and it's okay. And that was about 10 years ago, and that's kind of when I made the decision to transition from contracting to go into commercial. Because I'll be honest, I really think I had a fear of going commercial because I was comfortable in the government world. You know what I mean? And like Isabel said, I was comfortable, I was doing my thing, but it's not where I wanted to be. And as you said, I sought out a rabbi, and I have my rabbi, and really I won him over with a foot long sandwich. It didn't take much, but I got him, and we're thick as thieves now, but he really, really, gave me a lot of advice, and talked to me about options and choices that I would have and would not have as a woman, a female in STEM. And I really started to plan my life after that.
All the higher you go in education, the less and less that you're going to see of your own kind. So this question is for Rain. I just wanted to know, since you come from an immigrant family, how did you manage? Like, I know you're an engineering manager, and the fact that there's not a lot of us that are engineering managers, how did you manage being an immigrant and like going to that high level of status of like, education? How did you manage with all of that? Like, did you take,
Yeah, that I was not going to apply for the manager position. I'll be completely honest. I was not going to apply for the manager position because at the time in my group, I was the only female. So I was like, I felt like if I did apply for it, I would be forcing the company to promote me for minority purposes. And I did not want to be put in that situation. I wanted to be promoted for my own merit. So I didn't apply. And the day before the rec closed, my manager at the time was like, why did you not apply? And I mean, I was floored because I never thought that he would expect me to apply. And I had only been with the company maybe 6 months at the time. And he was like, no, I think you should apply. So I applied, and I went through the interview process, and I never ever approached it thinking that I would actually get the position. I approached it like this is research and learning for the next time I decide to do this. I'm gonna go through this and I'm gonna learn everything that I need to do. So when I apply the next time, I'm gonna get it. And when I got the phone call, I, answered all the questions. He was like, my new manager was like, congratulations and everything. But I don't think I actually like really registered to me that he was offering me the position. I answered the phone call and was having the conversation to him like it was you didn't get qualified, but this we're happy that you applied and things like that. And at the end of the conversation, he was like, you do know I'm offering you the position. And I was like, yes, I do know that. And he was like, but I'm not sensing any excitement. I said, don't worry, as soon as I get off the phone, it's going down. So I totally understand where you're coming from when you're asking the question, because there's not really a lot of women in management and in engineering management, and it should be, because women rule the world. But we're getting there. We're getting there.
Thank you. So this next question is for Rain again. So as someone who didn't follow the typical path of going to university after high school, what was an important lesson that you got out of high school that has helped you in the real world?
Oh man, I think the most important lesson I learned leaving high school, when I made the decision that I was not going to go to college then, and it was that you can accept failure and it not slow you down or stop your process, or stop your progress. Like, me going straight into the military was going to be a hit or miss. I didn't know what I was stepping into, but I made the commitment for the 4 years because I felt like it was a building block to prepare me to go to college when I was done. And I felt like it would actually give me that on the job experience, or the opportunity to narrow down the things that I did like about engineering and didn't like about engineering, so I could focus on that path once I got out. Like, it wasn't my intention to be I guess, to do 20 years, but I at least wanted to commit to that contract and honor it, and then kind of go from there. So that was the biggest lesson that I learned leaving high school, and making that decision was like, it might be tough, it might be hard, but I'm not going to take any failure as a setback. It's just a lesson learned.
Thank you so much, Rain. Our next panelist, Jimmesha, a question is, you mentioned earlier that you suffered from imposter syndrome. So what advice do you have for dealing with that?
You're mute.
Excuse me. I think everyone kind of has their own tactics for how they deal with that, but just a high level, some recommendations I have for that. Breathing, yoga, talking to a mentor, which I thought was very good. Talking to my former boss, who actually, recommended me for the position. Try to get an idea of like what she saw in me in that role, which I think helped me do some self-reflection as far as, I'm a badass. I had to do some of that reflecting, and I think having those conversations was great. I read a book about I cannot remember the name of it, but it was about bringing your authentic self to work, especially as a woman of color. So I really focused on what is it that's unique about Jimmesha in this role that only Jimmesha can bring to this role. And I started thinking about what is it about me? And I think it's the ability to work with cross-functional teams on a common goal. I think that is huge. So once I reflected on what is it special about Jimmesha and what is it I bring to this role, I realized there's no one else who could do this role like Jimmesha can do it. So I think that was very beneficial to me. And I encourage other people to do that as well. What is it that you bring uniquely to any type of role you're going to be taking on? And honor that.
I loved what you said at the last one, because I feel like a lot of us people today need to realize that. But my question to you, what was it like for you to go to college as a Black female woman? At the same time, did you always know what you were going to do or become when you went to college?
Oh, goodness. Okay, so first of all, being at UNN, being almost a 6-foot-tall Black woman, a lot of people assumed I was there on an athletic scholarship. I was not. So there was that type of bias that people had. Me being a Black female at college, it must be an athletic scholarship. Nope, actually got some academic money to go to school out of state at the University of New Mexico. So there was that piece. Definitely did not know what I wanted to do. Like I said, I thought I was, at this particular point in my life, I thought I'd be the anchor of the Today Show, being a journalism and mass communications major. But life has a way of really just pitching you things different than what you believe things are supposed to be in your life. So I was trying to pursue journalism at a time when a lot of news stations were moving away from on live anchors. A lot of America was starting to get their news on their own through different types of mechanisms besides just the local news or the national news. So it just wasn't a good time to get into journalism. But I knew that I did not want to do the same thing every day. I knew I loved bringing people together to work toward a common goal. And so those things just stuck with me as far as what I wanted to do as far as professionally. And I've kind of let that be my compass, and it's just expanded. But I've kept those two things at my core. What is it? How can every day be different? And how can I bring a cross-functional team together to work toward a common goal and have a good, successful launch?
Thank you very much. To sum everything up, this is for everyone. Have you experienced any difficulties being a woman in STEM? And is it harder to succeed being in STEM? Make it short since we're almost, we're running out of time. But yeah. Isabella, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can start. I think there's always going to be struggles in STEM. And I think as a woman in STEM, you're going to, and hopefully not as you guys get into your careers as much as the four of us, but you're going to run into situations where you are the only woman in the room. And it's not so much a struggle externally a lot of the times as it is internally, and going back to that imposter syndrome. And I think being able to use a little bit of imposter syndrome to know the product you're working on, know the customer, know the information better than anyone in that room is going to bring you out of that imposter syndrome, and is going to put you in a place in that room of all engineers, all men, whatever you're in, and it's going to give you the confidence, and also you're going to earn the respect of the other people in that room. And I think focusing on that, being your best self, being the smartest in the room, and trying to really come and bring your A game every time is going to offset any sort of negativity or hardships being a woman in engineering. Focus on what you can control and really drive that home.
Someone wants to say anything?
Yeah.
We have one more minute.
I was going to say something. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
You could go. We have one more minute. Whoever wants to conclude it could go on.
Sure. I was just going to say, we can't guarantee that you're not going to have a hard time, but STEM is a difficult field, and everybody feels that imposter syndrome. You know, I actually held an event for our company once where we watched a TED Talk on imposter syndrome, and it was geared towards women, but we had a lot of male attendance because what we found is that men feel that imposter syndrome too. And, you know, sure, you may run into some men who have more outdated views on working with women, but that's, you know, fewer and farther between these days. And certainly with, you know, we're always standing on the shoulders of the women who came before us, and hopefully, you know, we are leading the way for Gen Z when they finally enter in their careers, so that it's easier for everybody in the future. But definitely, you know, I went to a conference once where the director for a satellite mission to Saturn said that she was typically the only woman in the room, and the only way to combat men who wanted to speak over her was to be the best in the room. So definitely echoing what Anna had said about making sure you do your homework, you know what you're talking about, and that will help alleviate that imposter syndrome, but also make it so that you don't have to be loud in order to be heard.
Hearing all of you guys' stories today not just empowers me, but empowers other young women. And you guys are so amazing. You guys did not brag enough about yourself, because the positions that you guys are in right now is amazing. But yeah, to sum everything up, I'll hand it to Chelsea.
Thank you again for joining us today. If you want to hear from our inspiring leaders, be sure to check out the Women Who Inspire podcast dropping next week. We asked San Diego County's K-12 students to design this year's 14th annual festival t-shirt. Vote now by scanning the QR code on the screen. The winner will be announced March 14th. Follow at LoveSTEM-SD on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn to check out www.lovestemsd.org for more information on STEM events in our community, including the upcoming San Diego Festival of Science and Engineering.